So yeah, what is a recession? Question 7 of this 2016. Yeah, so recession is a reduction in or a decline in economic activity in a country. It's a temporary economic decline in the level of output in a country, right? To make our answer sound a little bit more spruced up, we can say for 2 consecutive quarters, right? It's a temporary economic decline. So yeah, for 2 consecutive quarters, 2 withdrawals from the circular flow of income. What are 2 withdrawals from the circular flow of income? So Sharish said savings. What else we have? Savings, yes. Again, a withdrawal is a leakage from the circular flow of income model. What else we have? What else are leakages or withdrawals? Right? Imports. Whenever we import, that is money leaking and going overseas. And lastly, taxation, right? So saving, taxation, and imports. Again, list 3 types of unemployment for me. List 3 types of unemployment. And also, I hope you study up unemployment, inflation, and recessions. And you also look at the policies to deal with each of those, right? When can we use when can we use fiscal policy, and when can we use monetary? When can we use expansionary? Right? So frictional, structural, seasonal, right? Look, there are a lot of small variations, what people might say, but for the main part, stick to the main ones and you'll be fine, right? Because when you go on Google, you just find a gazillion types. Right? Frictional, structural, seasonal. As an economics student, you should know real wage as well. Right? 2 ways in which fiscal policy can be used to reduce unemployment in the tourism sector. Right? So there's a perfect question where you can answer right now, because right now, one problem in the Caribbean is that COVID has hindered tourism. Right? COVID has hindered tourism. So what can the government do from a fiscal policy standpoint to improve economic growth again? What can we do? What have we looked at that we can do? So let me hear. You would want to start off by stating what is your fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is the use of government taxes, government spending to influence economic activity, right? So what are some initiatives that the government can do to improve tourism? Well, I'm not satisfied with a lot of the answers here, so let me just give you it straight. Let's start on the taxation end. The government can reduce taxation on vehicles used for tourism. Example here in Guyana, a lot of the tourism is ecotourism. You've seen in the recent budget that the government reduced the taxes on those vehicles. This means these vehicles can be cheaper. A lot more persons are able to access them and go into these villages. And this will have an effect, of course, more tourism, right? More tourism firms can equip themselves to tackle the improving and the rise in tourism rates, right? So does that make sense what I'm saying? The reduction of taxes on vehicles used in the tourism sector. You might want to give the example with Guyana to further carry home your point. However, if we were in another CARICOM country, let's say Barbados, they have a lot of oceans, maybe the government could have given a reduction on taxes or VAT for boats because their tourism is more in the sea rather than us, which is hinterland, and you need 4x4s. So am I making sense with this point? Yes, no? Are you following? Right? Another point in relation to taxation, you might say taxation, reduction in taxation also leaves more disposable income in the hands of the local population. So tourism doesn't have to come from overseas alone, you know. We can have our local tourism sector. So if persons have more taxes locally, they have more disposable income locally, they're able to go and tour the country more, which again is an increase in the flow of activity, the flow of economic activity, the circular flow of income, right? The money is moving around. Right? So the reduction in taxes is going to lead to higher disposable income, lead to more tourist activity for locals because they are able to spend more, enjoy the life more. Another good point I would make is government spending on maybe projects. Maybe they can spend on entertainment initiatives, such as we see the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports has they try to host the cricket carnival, right? So they put in a bid for that because again, a carnival like that, with coupled with cricket, which is a very lucrative sport in the Caribbean, will encourage a lot of persons from other islands to visit Guyana. So the government can spend on tourism products. You can cite that example. The government can spend on infrastructure that will facilitate tourism, such as building roads to go into Letem, such as the Linen to Mabura project, right? Even if you don't know the specific names, you can just cite that example. The government can spend on initiatives that boost tourism, such as either building these roads to go to these areas, right? They can even build maybe entertainment venues. So it will have tourism is one, and it will also provide jobs for persons who don't have jobs, right? So it's going to reduce the employment in the tourism sector, but it's also going to reduce general unemployment because the government will hire people to do these projects. Am I making sense? Right? So the retail price index, so that is three salient points I give you. Review your notes and maybe you'll come up with more, but that was my 2 points that I said, and I gave you 3. Right? And there are a lot of other things the government can do. The government can try to spend money on training centers to train persons who are seasonally unemployed in the tourism sector so they can have skills to go in and learn in another sector, right? That is something else we can do. There's a 4th point. E. So again, that's government spending. And I talked about how the taxation part can play a role. So you see, you really have to have your head on. You can't just read the notes and say, okay, well, I know this here. I know it's fiscal policy and I know it's monetary. Economics is application. You see this as we go along these papers. It's a lot of application. E. The retail price index is given as 115 and a GDP is currently recorded at 500 billion. Calculate the real output. So how do we calculate real output? right? So tell me what you think we have to do for this year. We would have looked at several times how to calculate real output, right? So again, the formula, I've added it here to calculate the real output. The formula we're going to use is real output is equal to nominal output divided by the deflator, and all of this times 100, right? What is the nominal output? 500 billion. So 500 divided by how much? 115. How much we can get? We can get 434, 0.4347. You times that by 100 now. So the real output by this logic, is 437 billion. So this is how much the GDP is when we adjust for inflation, right? So I hope you all grasp what's going on there. If you did not get to study this specific question as yet. The next and last question is, what does the retail price index indicate about inflation? What does the retail price index indicate about inflation? Go that for me. What does it indicate about inflation? Right, so again, what does the retail price index imply? Again, the retail price index is 115. This means that price has increased 15% from the previous year, because remember the base year is 100, which is the previous year. So 15% increase, right? So this wraps up number 7. You can answer for yourself if you think you could have answered one like that, should it have come unprepared, right? So you need to see what you need to work on. And let's go into 8. It got some questions there on finance and perhaps monetary, no, not on monetary policy, but I hope you go and study monetary policy too. Remember, I highlighted the order in which to study your notes. And the topics are listed there, so you know where you have to study based on what is coming as well. Right? So define barter is the exchange of use of goods without the use of money. 3 disadvantages of barter. I'll just go through this quickly. Um, 3 disadvantages. We have to division problems, double coincidence of wants. What's the 3rd disadvantage? It's hard to store value, right? You can't store your chicken after you cut it back in the days. It's hard to do that. It's also hard to make deferred payments at times, right? So 2 functions of the financial sector in an economy. I leave that one to you. 2 functions of the financial sector in an economy. So it takes funds from savers through deposits and lend them to borrowers, correct? It facilitates trade, it transfers resources between savers and borrowers. It provides the private sector with a source of investment, right? It facilitates credit transactions. It's a means of liquidity in the economy, right? Meaning so we can get funds. So those are all points. So question 8D now, explain how the central bank would use each of the following tools, discount rate and reserve requirements, to increase the money supply. So you need to know some sort of, and also I hope you know what effect the money supply has on GDP, right? So yeah, let's go through this here. So as you answer, Shirisha, I will answer as well. So you says they reduce the reserve requirement ratio, leaving commercial banks with more assets and money to lend out. Let's see. Right? So again, reserve requirement ratio. They can reduce it, you're saying. So you need to include this is your quantity supply of money, right? Remember that's also a straight line because it's fixed. And this is your quantity demanded of money, your money demand. QDM, right? So you're saying if we reduce reserve requirement, right? Reducing reserve requirement leaves commercial bank with more money in their hands so they can lend out. So reducing reserve requirements, you have to say, will cause the money supply to shift to the right, right? And you can also add, because it's for 4 mark, what effect this would have on interest rates, right? This would have the effect of reducing interest rates from R to, let's say, R1, right? So interest rates reduce and a quantity supply increase from that amount to this SM1, right? So interest rates reduce when we increase the money supply. And remember, interest rates reduce. And remember, lower interest rates are what is needed to have expansionary growth. So expansionary monetary policy, again, is anything that lowers interest rate, because lower interest rate cause persons to spend more in an economy. It's cheaper to borrow money, so we spend more. Let's talk about the discount rate now. Can you remember how the discount rate works? How does the discount rate work? Let's use the same diagram. So we want to achieve the same thing. We want to achieve the money supply shifting out, hence reducing interest rates to R1, right? To R1. So what can we do to discount rates? Do we reduce discount rates, or, you need to also, something that I didn't realize, you need to explain what each of these things are. The reserve requirement is the amount that firms cannot loan out to the public, right? The ratio indicates where's the amount they can and cannot loan out, or they have to keep as a deposit. The discount rate is the rate at which what? The banks borrow money from the central bank, right? It's also called the interbank rate. Can you remember that? Or the bank rate is which they borrow from the central bank. So what do? If they reduce the interbank rate, it is now cheaper to borrow money. If they reduce it, it's cheaper to loan between the bank and the commercial bank, the central bank and the commercial. So if it's cheaper, they will obviously borrow and have more loans. However, well, yeah, that would increase the money supply because more loans are happening. But I want you to also be aware of the other side. If they were to increase it, what would happen? There'd be less loans. But that's not what the question is about. Right? So again, this here wraps up these two. By increasing the reserve requirements, by decreasing the reserve requirements and decreasing the discount rates, the money supply would increase both times, causing us to have a lower exchange interest rate and, well, GDP, right? GDP would shift out as a result, right? AD shift out. So this is just me rambling a bit to steer you in the direction of points that you need to go and study when we end this session. I will leave you to answer E on your own because it's easy. But yeah, this is it from me today. Let me end this.